Okay, welcome everybody. This is our inaugural podcast for Talon Talks. I'm happy to say that we're live now on YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Please remember anything that the guest says during this podcast is not, it just reflects their views and does not reflect Talon or any legalese out there. I'm happy to introduce my co-host, Mr. Dale Ginn, to this podcast and just share with you our insight into our profession, which is exploration at this moment. So, Dale, welcome.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks. This it's a good start. Interesting way to get these issues out there and talk about them. Different people involved in our industry, right?
Yeah, that's totally what we're. I guess what you and I had originally talked about in getting this rolling along. You know, a lot of people don't understand the different cycles and levels in mining, and they think mining is just mining. Like it's not anything to do with prospecting, exploration, even before that, staking, I guess, claims. So, you know, we'll like to take everybody through the different processes as we go and introduce our podcasts in each episode. But for this episode, I know that you and I have worked with him in the past, and we've gathered a lot of insight from him. Um, you know, his background is 26 years of chief for his community. He's been a vice chief for his political territory organization, and now he is the chairman of Niiwin, which is the twinning of the highway project. We'd like to bring in Mr. George Kakeway.
Welcome, George.
Glad to see you. Long
Hey,
time no
George.
see.
Yeah, welcome, George. We were just introducing you as you know, all the years that you've had as a chief and your value and your knowledge as I guess time has moved on in constitutional challenges and laying out the framework for communities to start working not only with government but telling them what to do, not telling them, but just asserting First Nations position. So I'd just like to give you a little bit of background about yourself and
First of all, I'm from the community of Rat Portage, referred as Riskoningam, and I was raised on Sunset Channel for 7 years of my early life, being there 9.5 months a year and coming to Kenora 2 months. So that was the beginning of my journey to really to who I am today and what I do. And I think it's important that part, which was very difficult in terms of first of all going to residential school for 12 years and how we were affected by colonization and in a very negative way, of course. And I think come a long ways in terms of trying to create a relationship with Canada, Ontario, of course, and how we began to understand how that affected us, particularly when you talk about the infrastructure that was developed by Canada and Ontario, and how that destroyed our economies as Anishinaabe people, and began to be beggars in our own land, kind of a statement. But I think it's key how you work out of that one, and how you begin to work what the relationship is, either with Canada or Ontario. But the other one that's real key is that proponent, industrial proponents, proponents that that are in the natural resources environment, and how that affects the natural world and the natural environment, and how that begins to have a relationship with these proponents, and how that we develop that in a way that that is transitional from the old colonial thinking kind of ideas. But I think the key is that relationship, and especially with First Nation communities, and how you begin to have trust in the communities, how you begin to understand the culture of the communities, how they operate, because one show doesn't fit all. So in that sense, it's very key and important that you begin to understand the community in itself, and that part is very, very important, because it's all about trust, it's about integrity, it's about duty and responsibility, and it's about building the economies of the communities, and how you begin to build economies within the territory of the people that live in that little territory, and how that relationship should work. And I think and how you message that, it's key. And one of the things that I've done a lot is when you talk about proponents, whether it's federal, provincial, or industry, let's go for a beer, let's talk, And I think the wrong way to do it is go into these communities with a blazing guns and say, here's what I'm going to do for you, here's what you're going to benefit, and here's the results of it. But a lot of these communities, they don't look for short-term benefits. They look for long-term benefits that even their future generations could benefit, not just for the time being that that proponents are there. So I think that's key. That the key messaging is there. Of course, you need honor, integrity, either by government or proponents. But I think it's when you go to these meetings, it's a matter of sometimes looking at each other in the eye. You could tell how a person reacts by looking them in the eye. And I think that's the key. And these are just some of the key things that I've done in terms of how we begin to move forward.
Well, yeah, the relationship building is it's critical. That's what that's what we found. We I'll let Dale share this in terms of his thoughts on this, but it's bang on. Like if we're not welcome there, we're not going to be there. That's the bottom line. That's what Dale and I've always talked about that, quite frankly, because you run into it a lot of times, and now it's starting to happen a little more than before. You got adversarial people's backs are up right away, and if they're not allowing you to build a relationship, then it's going to be a challenge forward. I don't know if you want to add to that, Dale.
Yeah, well, I think obviously my background is industry, but I think what's also important to the relationship is that there's a level of education and understanding of each other's positions, and and how do you make a decision without knowing what exploration means, or what the actual process or industry is, right? So I think what you and I have always said from when we started Talon is if you can't, like, if you're actually not wanted somewhere, that's fine. But it's good to know that, and it's good to know that it came from a educated,
Yes.
all-round educated sort of a place, right? If it just comes from snippets here and there, and what you, let's say, take from bureaucrats or TV or the internet, then it's hard to make a good decision, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, like that's critical too, you know, when when we go forward on our projects, you know, we've always said, look at, um, you know, let's try and identify if if in fact the community even wants to work. Like that's the other thing too, George. Like that's one thing that
Yeah,
I know, like you've been successful with this new project that you're involved with, and you know, I'm sure you've had your challenges with that as well.
yeah. I think the first part of it, Ontario, regarding that vision, it's about the vision, and that's what we look for is what is consistent with the vision of Ontario. What is the vision with the four communities, Niiwin Wendaanimok partners? What is the vision? Okay.
Back up, George, and introduce that project just so
Uh,
listeners know what we're talking about.
it's a twinning of the highway between Manitoba border and Ontario, Kenora, and what it is, the twinning of the highway between that stretch, about 48 kilometers, and and what it is basically is that when we first started talking about this, the province came to us
Well, but
and
and
said,
what and who's that, George?
"Well,
The
the
communities
min-
that
the Nissachuan, Rishkonigam, Shore Lake 40, and Washigamas Bay."
okay.
Okay, so what happened there is that they came to us as, "Look, we want to build twinning, we want to twin the highway," and we said, "Then what's your principles behind it? What's your vision behind it?" And so, okay, that's fine. They said, "You know, we want to make the safety, we want to make the highway safe and the environment and so on and so forth." Man. But what they didn't really talk about is the supply chain, because that's the essence of tuning in highways is a supply chain. Everything else is secondary. Okay, so that's they kind of disguise that in a little bit of way, but still we caught on to it anyway. But I think the key is that so okay, we'll help you with that. We'll support you, but it is a conditional consent how we're going to do it. Okay, so of course there's a vision and the principles behind that vision, and how and what is the process. We're not going to use you know, provincial or federal laws as process. We got our laws we have to implement. You got your laws you have to implement. So what's the process? And we call that, when you talk again, the Great Resource Law. And they said, we'll accept that. We'll follow that principle. So if you're going to accept that principle, then we don't need lawyers at the table. We said, we want to talk to you. We want to talk to nobody else but you. They said, that's fine. So they came to the table and said, do you have the mandate? Well, well, go and get a mandate. But we got a mandate to talk to you about it, Chief. See, this is a process I'm talking about, and now you have a relationship by a straight dialogue and big forward, So what is now that partnership? Is depending on that highway, that's a partnership, But the partnership begins with the harmonization pack assessment. We use Anishinaabe laws, we use Anishinaabe elders, and so on and so forth, because we've been here for thousands of years. We know the land, but we could use some of your signs as harmonization into how we address the whole environmental issue. So that was accepted, so fine. So now the principle is there, the vision is there. Now who's going to pay for the capacity? And they said, who? Well, you got to pay. We got no money. You know,
Yeah.
we had a treaty 150 years ago. You walked off the table. You took trillions of dollars off our land. Now you got to pay. That's part of that conditional consent. They have to pay once they support it. And I think that's the key in this particular case. The proponents is the government of Ontario, but it's different when you deal with industry, you see. But the same principle should apply. But that doesn't necessarily mean that one show fits all, eh? Each community has its own standards, his own vision, his own principles, eh? But it's that process that needs to be worked out. Canada doesn't have a process. Ontario doesn't have a process, but it has
Yeah.
laws. But it's got no process.
Yeah, we know that. We've dealt with a number of projects across well, Quebec and Ontario now. And of course where Dale cut his teeth as lead in actually developing a mine up in Bissett, Manitoba. And yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense because you're looking at building relationships as you roll forward. When it relates to exploration, that's the proponent, does play a role in that. But more importantly, I think when we look at getting projects rolling along, our first invite is to ask the community if they want to assume any risk, which is a lot of them don't, which is fine. But then the ones that do, then you say, okay, well, that's a partnership, and that's something that we've always tried to do, but it's been pretty difficult, eh, Dale?
Yeah, by assuming the risk, that means being a part as an owner,
Yes.
part owner, which makes you a partner in a lot of ways. But we also tend to try to get to the community and tell, go through with them what we would like to do before we deal with government, because that's kind of a filter, right? The government, and it needs to be there, but it doesn't always serve either us or the community the best. It's best to talk, as George said, eye to eye, person to person first. Then we'll deal with the government.
Yeah, I think that's always been, our first foot forward is to speak to the community first. And I think we've actually talked about it a couple of times that we would much rather buy permits from the communities that are issued from the communities than government, because the communities know exactly what they want and what's required. So I don't know if you're at that stage yet,
Yeah.
George.
Well, I think the key is that establishing that relationship. What is the vision, and what are the principles behind the vision? Once you kind of establish that those key principles and areas, then what is the process? What is the process? That's the key. The process doesn't necessarily mean is early exploration agreements or agreements, but they could be inclusive as part of a memorandum of understanding.
That's one thing that we've always, I think that's the one thing that's put us a leg up, is that we've used those almost as guiding templates, but we haven't adhered to them. So it allows us to work. I know when working with the communities, there's stages, and that was a result of that KI5 decision, I think over 10 years ago. But it's still, for us to go to the communities and say early exploration, well, the only thing that does, it just stops a trigger point to go to advanced exploration for more money, right? So, but getting everything lined up at the beginning, in the outset, or I guess in the beginning with the community, and have a clear understanding with them, that's definitely benefiting any type of the development, and more importantly, strengthening the relationship. Anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to add to this, Dale?
Well, like you say, that because it is the beginning of the cycle, if you will, and there's heavy risk in the exploration business, and so you need to, as George said, get that relationship right off the bat. Everything else will likely follow if that goes well. I mean, certainly don't, like you said, we never want to. There's just no point in forcing your way in anymore. those days are long gone, as far as I can tell. And so, yeah, like George says, get that relationship right first, and then see where it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think,
sorry, go
I,
ahead, George.
I think it's, I think well, you're on the right track, eh? Because within those processes and forums, you need to protect the investors, front and foremost. You have to be comfortable because, I guess it's sort of their money. They need to protect that, that investment. But I think, as Dale said, I think it's the proper way of doing it. And I think, really establishing what the process is, you know, and, but at the same time, what is the knowledge of the area? Getting elders involved in a way that it protects the environment, because we have a very bad history, 150 years, about destroying our natural environment and destroying our economies, and a lot of our older generation, the new generation, are thinking the same principle, that yeah, how does that protect our environment? How does that protect our our ties to our land, kind of idea and approach, But I think as we're talking, I think that's the proper way. I think I know tree is tree. There's got to go to handle on that.
Yeah.
If the community is satisfied, yes, we got an agreement, we got a deal, then it doesn't take long. It's a matter of signing off on the permits, and that's the way it works.
Well, I like what you said about the science, the elder science, and combine that with the the new science, because there's a lot each one adds to the whole picture, right?
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example here with that twinning of the highway. Just by Shoal Lake turnoff, there's a big swamp there. Going to 39, there's a big swamp in that area in Royal Lake, and that's where the road goes. So what the province was proposing, we're going to twin that part, and we said no, because you won't get the permission to twin that highway on that specific direction. And they said the reason why you're not going to be able to do it and get our consent, because there's a black ash forest there. You cannot touch that black ash forest. So they went south of the swamp and avoided the black ash forest, because that forest is sacred to us, and because of where there's habitats there, deer, and so on. So now we got a consensus where the route selection is going to go of the twinning of the highway. Just an example of how you could work with communities and be able to have some sort of a dialogue or a process where you could avoid a lot of these things. I think it's just a matter of elders and the communities, because they got 10,000 years of knowledge, 20,000 years of knowledge on that land, and I think that's the key in understanding that, and how there's possibilities. It's not that they're against development. It's a matter of doing it right, the right way. Let's not repeat the past, and that's what they're concerned about. It's really about protecting my future generation, your future generation, without completely destroying the economy for purposes of, whatever. So anyways, I think that's key in how you begin to work with communities, and having that trust, the honor, integrity, and all these things, because that's been missing in the last 150 years, because our people still know what happened in the past. So it's a trusting it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to bring this to a close, this discussion. George, we really appreciate your insight and knowledge on this. This is sorry I had to excuse myself. My battery is running low on my computer, so
Okay.
I had to duck out. But this is just the beginning of our series of episodes that we're going to be running here. Dale, do you have any more thoughts on what George has added here?
Well, look, George and people like George are invaluable, right, for knowledge and their ability to reach different parts of the communities. And so with regard to the Talon Talks, like, I think it's great. We can approach so many different subjects with regard to development and on traditional lands and how we work through things and work together and whatnot, and to have a lot of different voices on this. It'll be interesting, and I think it should provide for some interesting listening.
Absolutely.
Well,
Go ahead, George.
if we do it that way, it's the right way.
Right on.
Yeah,
There's really no other way.
I agree. Thanks, George, for your contribution and participating in our inaugural discussions.
Thanks, George.
Well,
Appreciate
thanks.
it.
Well, thanks for asking me to be here and participate. Thank you very much.
Okay.